Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you my Hero Academia Chapter 298 read-through. Now, this chapter has several jumps through time. The first one being at the time of the Jakku Hospital raid. The second one being 6 hours after the attack on Tartarus, and the final one being 2 days after that. We start off with a flashback within this first flashback, and it says, "It was our money that paid for your sushi, remember? Not to mention your medical treatment and all that edited footage and Toga's new coat." "Huh? Your body of a boss should be in a hospital, but instead you get to keep him in this hideout? Who'd you gotta thank to get that?" "My public face as the Detnerat CEO, and my new role as the commander of a revolution following the Liberation Army's change in leadership. After the crusade at Dacre City, I made those two faces of mine into two separate people themselves. Pulling such an underhanded trick like falsely requesting a joint venture into support items? I knew you commissioned fools had been keeping me under surveillance, but there was the possibility that you couldn't forget our products either. It's a good thing that I prepared two faces for this meeting. I didn't think that you would resort to these measures. Is this the public order you seek to create? Is this something you certainly needed? However, that we strive for is peace without order, genuine freedom. Liberate yourselves. The seeds have already been planted." I'm going to try and keep that as the voice for Reed Destro, because it starts with him thinking back to when the new leaders of the Paranormal Liberation Front, that being the original League of Villains members, were first being brought onto stage, when he was thinking about the sushi, the medical treatment and all that, and Twice is the one who asked how they managed to keep their boss in the hideout instead of in a hospital. But we see Reed Destro at the main headquarters of the Hero Safety Commission, and we see that he has wiped out almost the entire Safety Commission. They seem that one hero seems active, like using some sort of, that's almost like Mina's acid, but not quite, to try and face off against him. And we see the sleepy guy from the provisional license training arc cradling the elderly woman who was talking to Hawks about his roles in all this. But we get a close-up of Reed Destro's face. Remember, this is happening at the same time as the Jakku hospital raid. So how is he here? Well, in that close-up of Reed Destro's face, we see it dripping, almost melting, and he collapses, just melts away into a puddle of goo. Similar, in fact identical, to one of Twice's clones. So somehow, while the real Reed Destro was hiding away in the underground bunker, Twice had managed to clone him and send him to wherever the Hero Safety Commission main office is to wreak havoc on them and wipe them out at the same time the public image of heroes was being destroyed. So, sort of attacking on two fronts when they were already fighting two different fronts. The next we see is 6 hours since the attack on Tartarus. 3:06 in the morning, Cyan prison. And we see the prison exploding and villains escaping. 3:55 AM, Baku prison. We see the prison exploding. 4:30 AM, Kuan prison. We see it exploding. We then see aerial carriers similar to the one that was bringing Vestinus to the battle, and we see that inside piloting one of them is All for One, or more, All for One is puppeting the pilot because he says the emergency aircrafts could only be operated through the employee's biometric identification, and as 7 prisons were attacked by the near-end high-ends, criminals managed to escape from 6 of them. 5:04 AM. With this, my arrangements have been fulfilled. What a dramatic day. Letting those wild people loose will make my trail more difficult to track. Apologies to you all, but I must ask that you watch over me while I rest. It surprised me how well we connected over video games and stuff. So, who are you? Because you're not the one I chose to follow. Not to worry. I have the utmost respect for Tamura's wishes. Starting now, I'll have him rest his body and make him perfect. And once he's perfect, our desires will be achieved. So, we see three of the 7 prisons exploding. We see what looks to be prisoners escaping from one of them, though we know that being freed by All for One likely means they now owe him a debt, whether he makes it public knowledge that he was the one that freed them to collect on that debt later down the line, or not, and we'll wait to see. But he is an incredibly intelligent individual to think of breaking into several other prisons just to make the ability to track him down more difficult. He meets back up with the League of Villains members, that being Darby, Spinner, and Skeptic, who obviously did get marveled and put into Spinner's cloak, like I thought. And he tells them to watch over Tamura's body, or him, while they sleep. But Spinner's just like, I don't know who you are. I work for Shigaraki. He's my friend. I don't know what your deal is, but I do not work for you. Even though Spinner was there when All for One was active, he never really interacted with All for One, at least that we saw. He only ever got close to Shigaraki. The last we see, as All for One walks out of the shadows to reveal himself, is Shigaraki with the final hand he has falling off of his face, revealing his eyes as open but pupilless, meaning that there is no one active in his body right now. So how All for One is managing to suppress Shigaraki in his own mind without also being the one in control of the body, I don't know. But yeah, I'm really going to be surprised if All for One manages to actually gain full control over Shigaraki's body. We then jump ahead again to 2 days later, and we see Bakugo waking up in a hospital room. His immediate response is to take off his respirator mask and sit up. And as he does so, the door to his room slides open and in walks 4 people. Not 4 people I would have initially expected to be the ones in Bakugo's room, as there's Mineta, Sato, Hagakure, and Sero. Now, one of them is Baku Squad, so I understand why he's there, but I'm not sure about the other 3. Mineta says, "Ah, you're awake. Shut up. Where the hell am I? What a relief. He's pissed off. That means he's in normal self. Don't make that your standard for evaluating me." This is Central Hospital, a hospital with some cutting edge and top-notch medical treatment. I'm so relieved. When I heard you were in the most critical state, they said you had a hole in your stomach. I'll go get a nurse. What about Deku and Todoroki? I'm so happy even a delinquent like you made it. Sensei, Senpai, and Endeavor. What happened to everyone? We get some comedic timing from Mineta, as, well, he's presumably the one who says that if Bakugo's pissed off, that means he's okay. And I reasoned that it was Sero who explained where they were and being relieved that Bakugo's okay, because out of all the 4 there, he's the one closest to Bakugo. And Mineta, as Bakugo's asking about the others, in a completely calm way, even calling Todoroki by his surname, not half and half, Mineta actually jumps up and gives Bakugo a hug around the neck, but Bakugo just puts his hand on his face and pushes him away. Now, I'm not sure which senpai they're talking about, because he's not talking about Manuel, Rocklock, or Ryukyu, that's her name, because he has no affiliation with any of them. Sensei is obviously Aizawa. Endeavor is, well, Endeavor, so that leaves 2 options for who Senpai is. That being Mirio, who is his direct senpai, being a 3rd year, or Best Jeanist, who I think is most likely the one he's talking about, but I can't be sure, that's why I put both options forward. And as he asks what happens to everyone, the 3 that aren't currently hugging Bakugo all look sad, and then we get a couple panels exploring through the hospital. We get a corridor. We see Gran Torino hooked up to a life support system. He seems to be conscious as he thinks Shimura and looks at his cape. And then we see a door, and to me this doctor looks like a mix between Yoshi and a Club Penguin character. I'm not even going to bother giving him a proper voice. I said the same thing to Gran Torino as well, but if you had even waited a moment longer, it would have been even worse. Thanks to Rocklock and the others prioritizing your life. You're here. President Mike is sitting beside Aizawa in his bed, looking down at Aizawa's lost leg, and he says, "Even Kayama-senpai. Why?" "Don't say it, Yamada. Just tell me. How are the students doing?" I keep forgetting that Midnight is actually, I think she's 2 years older than, or was 2 years older than Mike and Aizawa. because they were classmates with Kurogiri, and she was, I'm pretty sure, a third year. But I'm not entirely sure. She may be 1 or 2 years older, but yeah, she was their senpai. We then see an image of another door, and inside is another assortment of students. I forgot to mention with the Bakugo scene, but all of the 1A students, they're in their school uniforms. I wouldn't think that 2 days after such a big event, they'd be at school, much less that school even be opening. I don't even think it's within the school time yet, but they're in their uniforms, and we have Momo, Mina, Kirishima, and Shoji standing at the bedside of a very bandaged Todoroki, who has bandages wrapped around most of his head, as he silently stares out the window. The people in his class try to cheer him up. Kirishima says, "Don't worry about it." And Mina is crying, trying to say, "It's fine. We ended up seeing Todoroki-san. It's alright," as Momo says, comforting her. And by the looks of it, those 3 kids have not slept a wink since they saw their teacher's dead body, which is completely understandable, because Kirishima and Momo, they both have massive bags under their eyes, and Mina we can't see because of the way she's tilted and crying. But they can hear from the bedroom some reporters chasing after someone who's trying to enter the hospital. "Do you have a connection with Endeavor? How is the condition at the moment? Does Endeavor understand the current devastation across Japan? Everyone would like to know his relationship with Derby. When will he hold a press conference? The people are restless. We want to know." As they're saying this, we see Endeavor, who is also hooked up to a respirator and still unconscious. And we get this nice image where one panel is the left side of Endeavor's face, and then the panel next to it is the right side of Shoto's face, and he says, well, he thinks that one is the root cause. His shining light becomes the dark in our demise. He's actually thinking, repeating the words that the glass orb guy that they battled during the internship thing said to them about Endeavor. He then goes on to think, his flames were more powerful than Father's. I couldn't win out in firepower. Those were the flames of a strong hatred. He kept watching all this time, all in order to disgrace Father. He's destroying his own body and getting numerous lives caught in the middle. He's me, the me from before that day, a me who burned his body. It can't be Father. Toyani has to be dealt with by me. He thinks on his previous interactions with Darby. He's had two. The first is when Darby says, how sad Todoroki Shoto, and when he's holding Bakugo's marble. And the other one is him dancing on top of Makia. And then there's the close-up of just the pure hatred in Darby's eyes, as Shoto realizes that that is very much who he could have turned out to be. And he realizes that he has to be the one to take down Darby. Endeavor's not going to be able to do it, but Shoto is roused out of his thoughts by a group of people opening his hospital room, and a woman says, "Shoto." It then reveals that Fuyumi and Natsuo have finally arrived at the hospital. "Pleasure to meet you." "Oh, Todoroki's older brother and sister." Todoroki's throat is still burnt, so he can't. But Mina is interrupted by a shadowy figure walking from around the corner behind Fuyumi. And the last we see of this room is Shoto's shocked expression, meaning this person behind Fuyumi is pretty much guaranteed to be Rei, and that could explain at least one of the reporter's questions, the "do you have a connection to Endeavor?" because she's probably not that publicly known as close to Endeavor, even though he has kept in constant check on her. But yeah, it's likely that Rei is finally out of her hospital and checking up on her son. We then cut back to Bakugo's group as he is marching his way down the hallway. "Calm down. If you keep moving around, you'll die. They told you not to move around too much." "Shut up, you idiots. Jerking me around is what's going to kill me." "What's saying it like that supposed to do?" This guy just won't stop." "If that idiot dies, I'll kill him." Todoroki and most of the others have regained consciousness, but Midoriya is the only one who hasn't shown any signs of waking up. As Bakugo is marching down the hallway, he's being held back by Mineta and Sato, which just shows how much strength Bakugo is getting from his anger. If he's got Sato holding him back and he's dragging him down the hallway, he is very concerned about his friend. If he's charging off this angrily at the thought of Deku being severely injured. But we see that it's Zero, the one who told him that Midoriya is still unconscious. And the last image we see of this chapter is Midoriya in his hospital bed with All Might by his side. And oh boy, is Midoriya not looking good. On top of being one of two heroes who are still unconscious, well, one of the only two heroes that are still unconscious, he is bandaged from neck down in casts. Not bandages like he has been all the other times he's broken his bones and that. No, these are solid plaster casts. He even has like shoulder pads strapped together to keep his arms in place, which means they haven't been able to heal him. Granted, he is unconscious, which means his energy levels are depleted, so Recovery Girl wouldn't be able to expedite his healing process with her quirk, but none of the other healing quirks have seemed to have done much to fix up his body. And it's very possible that Midoriya will lose use of at least one of his arms. At least until Eri can recharge enough power to fix him, but who knows how long that actually takes. But this was pretty much an ending chapter, basically the closing of an arc and the start of a new one. I reckon that anything prior to the two-day time skip would be the last, well, seen as the last chapter of the war arc, and anything after the 2 day skip is the recovery arc. At least that's what I'm calling it. We don't know what it's going to be yet, but yeah. I am a little confused as to the groupings they chose to do with Bakugo and Shoto. Like, I would have expected Mina and Kirishima to have been in with Bakugo and Sero, but because Bakugo hates Mineta. They don't really interact, so, but Mineta is, in terms of class dynamic, closer to Deku's squad, but also excluded from Deku's squad, whereas Hagakure, she's understandable to be with Bakugo because she's closest to that group, but not quite in it. Sato and Shoji were probably just random inclusions in the chapter to say, yeah, everyone from the school is here, and they're just all rotating, taking shifts and that. As much as it pains me to see these kids in pain, it is nice that they're actually showing some like mental strain, and they're feeling some impact from what they went through, with the fact that Mina's still breaking down. She can't bring up the joyful self that she can normally bring up in times of strife. Momo and Kirishima haven't slept a wink. You can't actually see Shoji's face. Like, normally his hair's off to slightly the side so you can see at least one of his eyes, but no, it's just straight over his eyes in the panels that we see. Mike and Aizawa have to have a discussion about losing their second friend now, because they lost Oboro in, I think as I've said, I've not read my Hero Academia Vigilante spin-off, but this is not exactly spoilers for that because it's been shown in this manga. But Oboro died. He got crushed by rocks while doing some hero stuff, and it metaphorically crushed Mike, Aizawa, and Midnight, because they were all in a group together. Not a hero group, but a group of friends. And now they find out that Oboro is not only technically alive, but he's a Nomu and working for the villains. And a few months later, they have to say goodbye to yet another member of that group. Yeah, I can see why Aizawa was not ready to talk about it yet. Just focusing on his kids rather than his lost friend. It's also weird to see Mike without any of his getup either, because he's got his hair tied down, sure he has his shades on, but he's in a t-shirt. I can't tell if those are jeans or tracksuit pants, but he's got none of his usual flair, even in casual. No one is okay after this, and it's good to show that it's not just a, hey, we've been through this traumatic experience, okay, we're fine, which is something I like about this manga. You get too many series in similar age groups where you don't see this. But Horikoshi makes a point to always show at least some residual effects from the events. Anyway, I don't have anything else to say about this. This was the close of one arc and the start of a new one, so I'm probably going to, when editing this, put the title of the next arc up in this top corner. But with that being said, if you guys noticed anything about this chapter that I didn't mention, if I saw something wrong and you guys can clarify it, or you just want to talk about what might be coming up in these chapters, comment down below. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.